Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining this webinar today as we talk about building efficiencies in the distribution chain by automating sales tax practices. My name is Tom B. Miller. I've been with Avalara since we started the company back in 2004. In that time, I've seen a lot of changes to the sales tax environment. I've worked with a lot of CFOs, tax managers, IT directors, and I'm excited about sharing some of the insights today that I've picked up through the years. We're going to focus today on the AvaTax services, including AvaTax calculation, search capture, and AvaTax returns for clients of all size businesses and types. Now, we'll spend a lot of the time today actually working in the service, so you get a chance to see what it looks like and how it works. But I would like to spend a couple of minutes trying to set the stage for what we're going to cover today. Initially, we'll talk about some of the key trends and things that are going on in the sales tax environment that are going to impact in and how we can help the business. And then, quite honestly, from there, we'll go into the presentation. So let's get started. Now, if you're in the wholesale distribution business, transaction taxes touch your entire operation. I mean, taxes are going to be determined not only by where your corporate offices are, but also by where your sales team is operating and how they're doing their job, whether they're traveling into various states to do presentations or sales, doing trade shows or partner meetings, things like that. If you have remote warehouses, those warehouses are all going to impact the amount of sales tax that you need to collect on a monthly basis. And sometimes it's even just where your equipment is and where your equipment's going to. Certainly your suppliers and their sales tax footprint is going to impact your business if you're doing any drop shipping from them. And then wherever you have your customers located, those are the places that you need to take a look at. So sales tax becomes a corporate-wide issue for most companies. And sales tax is hard. In order to do sales tax, there's a lot that you need to think about. That's what we're going to talk about today. And I've had accountants tell me that they'd rather go through a root canal than try to understand all the complexities of the sales tax environment. So let's start off by talking about the market. I often run into some pretty significant misinformation that actually keeps businesses from being truly compliant. What many companies that I talk to tell me is that they don't need to worry about sales tax compliance because maybe they're too small, maybe they only sell online, their products are tax exempt, or they're doing it internally just fine. But here's some stats from the Wakefield Group just a couple of years ago that say otherwise. 44% of the companies that Wakefield interviewed told us that they couldn't remember the last time that they reviewed their sales tax processes. That means quite often, potentially, processes that may have worked 2, 3, 5 years ago no longer are appropriate. And almost half of the businesses that they spoke with told us that if they underwent a sales tax audit, that auditor would find a mistake, which leads to large penalties, fines, and interests. The average total cost for a business that goes through a sales tax audit, small and mid-sized business, is just south of $115,000. So it's a big problem. It's something that companies need to address, and more often than not, they're looking at these issues. That's why we're here today. That's what we're going to be talking about. So there's a lot of different issues that you need to address when you're talking about transactional taxes. First, you need to get the calculation right. Now, that sounds easy, but there's really a lot that goes into it. First, you need to pick the correct jurisdiction. You need to know the rates and rules for each product and service. You need to know if the customer is tax exempt or not, and then be able to prove it in an audit. And then at the end of the month, the end of the quarter, depending on what your tax calendar is, you need to aggregate all of your sales and purchase information into a spreadsheet, probably is what most of you are using, to process, create, and then submit the returns on time. When the returns are ready to go, you need to do a number of different check requests from the AP group, get the checks printed, put them in an envelope, mail them all off. It's a big job. And if you're doing business internationally, you have a lot more to deal with. Instead of just sales tax, you're dealing with value-added tax and excise fees, import duties, landed cost, preparing the returns in the national language, and submitting with the national currency. There's a lot there. Today, I think we'll focus just on the domestic issues. I think that probably makes a little more sense for the purpose of this presentation. Now, if you're not using an automated service, I can probably guess at what you're doing. First, you're creating a customer record in your ERP or your web store somewhere, and you're assigning a tax jurisdiction to that record. Well, that means that you're also maintaining a table of tax rates somewhere else in your system. You're combining all the appropriate rates into a schedule, and then you're attaching that schedule to the customer. Then over on the inventory side or the billing side, you're creating custom tax exempt rules and rates for each specific item for the different jurisdictions that you're selling into. Generally, those would be the items that are taxable differently from state to state. Might be exempt in one state, taxable in another, and you're creating custom exempt rules. It's time consuming, it's research bound, and it's going to get out of date fairly quickly. Well, we take all of that off your desk. You'll have one tax code, AvaTax, and we handle the rest. You never have to worry about jurisdictional boundaries, rate changes, or legislative changes to the rules. And if you're using our Cert Capture service, we manage all the tax exempt certificates for you. So the first question you need to answer is simple question: where do I have the obligation to collect tax in the first place? Well, that's a concept called Nexus. And Nexus really is just an understanding that a state, any state under their laws, can declare that you have enough of a business presence in their state so that they can force you to become a tax collector for them. And each state has its own definition. They generally look at facility location, people in state, your products, whether you're renting or leasing products or services, either to use yourself or to your customers, and in some cases revenue or even the number of sales or sales activities in a state, like visits, trainings, trade shows, things like that. The states are all trying to expand their definition of Nexus, and we can help you. Really, all you want to do is grow your business. Our customers want to be compliant and audit ready, but with growth comes complexity and more and bigger compliance challenges. Your systems become more complex as you get bigger. There's more rates, rules, and changes that you have to track. Your return preparation tasks get larger, and according to that recent Wakefield study, the average mid-sized business spends already about $63,000 annually on manual processes. And then if they get into an audit, that's that extra $115,000 we talked about a moment ago. Really, all you want to do is achieve compliance, you want to cut costs, you want to increase your efficiencies, and you want to find ways to grow the business. But the tax landscape is incredibly huge. There's over 152 million addresses in the country. Each of them fall into one or more sales tax jurisdictions. And in some cases, there might be 4 or 5 or sometimes even more jurisdictions overlapping that specific address. All of those, as business people, you need to be aware of when you're looking to identify the correct tax rate. There's 12,000 jurisdictions in the country that overlap. There's millions of product exemptions, thousands of changes annually. Overall, it adds up to potentially millions of updates in your database. The value we bring to the table is you don't have to have full-time people sitting there watching the sales tax laws. Those are the things that we do for you. Now, we talked about the number of jurisdictions being immense. As I mentioned, there's over 12,000 of them. Every color here is a different tax jurisdiction, each able to create its own tax rules. I like the one where, candy bars in Indiana. That example, if you buy a Nestle's Crunch in a convenience store in Indiana, that's a taxable event. But the candy bar sitting right next to it, the Kit Kat, that has milk or flour or something in it, so it's considered food in Indiana, so it is tax exempt. And those taxability laws are ever changing. It's essential for a seller to know what's taxable in each jurisdiction to prevent exposure and liability under audit. Product taxability laws, furthermore, are not consistent across state lines, so what might be taxable in one state might be tax exempt in another. And you need to know what's not taxable in order to avoid overcharging your customers and maybe becoming the victim of a class action lawsuit. So we recommend a taxability review on your products and services, especially if you've added new products and services. Now, there's a lot of different products that get taxed differently from state to state, like clothing. Some of the more complex industries are going to be if you're selling hardware or software or digital goods, any kind of service. If your business is wrapped around medical devices or food, beverage, dietary supplements, you have some pretty complex rules to live with. If you're selling clothing and apparel, it gets even worse. And those are just a couple of different examples. Our clients are very concerned about making sure that the amount of tax they're charging, they're collecting from their customers and remitting to the states is accurate. Very difficult to do with all the complexity in the rules. And what makes it so important is that the states rely on this sales tax revenue. We know that most of them have been operating in the red for years, but this slide will show you that 47% of all state revenue comes from sales and use taxes. So it's a big piece of the business. It's important to them. Last year alone, there was over $23 billion in uncollected use taxes across all the states. In California, it was over $4 billion apiece, and alone, and in New York, it was almost $2 billion in uncollected taxes. Now, clearly, that's not enough in most cases to balance the budget, but it does get them a good step forward in making that happen. So it's a big pie, and it's important to them. Now, I've heard a lot of misconceptions over the years, so let's just talk about a few of them. We've seen a trend recently from manufacturers and distributors who are opening up new sales channels, direct-to-consumer channels, particularly in the e-commerce environment, selling through a web store direct to the customer. Sales tax is going to be a new concern for most of those firms, and it presents all of the challenges that we've been discussing. In all cases, though, they're buying product that might obligate them to use tax, and they'll have to collect and track sales tax exemption certificates. You might only have Nexus in 1 or 2 states, but if you're using a drop shipping supplier, they might bill you for tax for shipments into states where they have Nexus, and you'll need to be aware of that. Many states have passed legislation that brings various services under the sales tax rules, and my favorite here is the companies that kind of take the head in the sand approach. We've never been audited, so it's not anything we need to worry about. So what's your risk and your impact? Well, there's a couple of risks. The sales tax coin on the opposite side is use tax. If you are buying product for consumption, whether you're a business or a consumer. If your supplier does not charge you sales tax, then you're obligated to pay the use tax. Or if you take products out of inventory, you buy for inventory for resale and take stuff out of inventory to be used as samples or demo equipment, then you're consuming that product. You owe the use tax on it. Now, your suppliers could be overcharging you use tax or sale. If the supplier overcharges you sales tax, you don't have the ability to go back to the state to reclaim it. You need to go back to the supplier to reclaim it. And if they're undercharging you or not charging you at all, then you have that obligation to self-assess your use tax to the state where you're located in. Same kind of thing happens on the sales tax side of the coin. You could undercharge your customers, which they may not get too concerned with, but at the end of the month, when you submit your tax returns, you need to remit the correct amount that should have been collected, whether you got that much or not. So the delta between what you've collected and what you're remitting is going to come out of net profit. So that's going to cost you money. The last risk really is simple. If you overcharge your customers, they're probably not going to be real happy with it, and that leads to negative customer satisfaction ratings. So by outsourcing the sales and use tax processes, you'll achieve compliance, you'll cut costs, you'll increase efficiencies, and you'll be able to focus on the more strategic initiatives important to your business. Now, AvaTax sits in the cloud between your order entry module, your web store, any of your billing systems, your point of sale system, wherever you're collecting sales and purchase information. We sit in the cloud between those systems and the government. And in less than a third of a second, your systems are going to have an accurate tax calculation for hundreds of thousands of products across all 12,000 jurisdictions, taking into account the tax status of your buyer. All you do is set it and forget it. Now, AvaTax comes with a built-in tax-exempt certificate management system, but our cert capture system is a more robust certificate management technology. It manages, stores, and organizes all of your customers' tax-exempt certificates. It has built-in communication systems to communicate with the customer when changes or updates are needed. And that means that you no longer have to keep these documents in an accordion file or scan them into different systems and keep them out on hard drives somewhere that are not related to your tax system. So when the government comes calling, you can comply with all the requests with a touch of your mouse. And at month end, we prepare and submit the tax returns, as well as provide treasury services to ensure that returns are submitted, paid accurately, and paid on time. Now, we also offer a number of other professional services, which are tax-based services deployed when and how you need it. We can do audit defense, Nexus studies, product taxability studies, voluntary disclosures, and other projects. So you have a partner combined with a calculation tool that can provide support in your specific situation. It's customized and tailored so that you have a partner working with you every step of the way. And let's be honest, sales tax is a compulsory activity. It doesn't put 10 cents on your bottom line or drive growth. It's a mandated activity. You have to do it. You're already spending thousands of dollars annually just trying to be compliant. So before we jump over into the service, let's talk just a few minutes about Avalara. We were formed back in 2004. There were a handful of employees in the company. Today we're supporting over 20,000 customers using the AvaTax services. And we're real proud of the fact that we have better than a 98% renewal rating every year. That means less than 2% of our customers leave us at the end of their subscription. Many of those customers, that 2%, are customers that just close business or get acquired and by bigger companies with different systems. We're adding over 500 new customers per month, which is more than many of our competitors do every year. And this year we expect to do 8 billion tax calculations, manage 16 million exemption certificates, and file $25 billion in annual returns for our clients. We're a company of about 1,400 employees today, and we were the first company in the industry to guarantee the accuracy of our sales tax calculations. We're up 5 nines. So you'll never have any problems. We never have to take the system down for maintenance because of the way we upgrade it. And I'll talk about that in just a few minutes. So with that, let's jump over into the AvaTax service so you can get an idea of what it looks like and how it works. Okay. So this is the AvaTax landing page. You won't spend a lot of time on this page. But certainly your CFOs and your controllers, as they're doing their audits and looking up tax information, they're going to log into the AvaTax service. This is what they'll see. You'll notice it will always tell you what's changing or what has recently changed. We do all our maintenance, our tax maintenance, in the middle of the night, generally on the last Saturday night of the month, East Coast time. We're always updating for a future period, so we never have to take the system down. So even if you have customers sitting on your website at 2 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday night towards the end of the month, placing orders, they're going to get an accurate tax calculation for that moment. Okay. Avalara all your training is built in through the Avalara University. Anybody who has a seat or who is defined as a user to AvaTax is welcome to go through the university training. There's no extra charges for that. The user's guide and the knowledge base are located online, available from your landing page. You can submit a case directly to tech support. You can open up a chat session with them, send them an email, or pick up the phone and give them a call. There's a number of different ways if you need tech support that you're able to get it. So again, we're not going to spend a lot of time here. When you first get your AvaTax subscription opened up, you're going to want to run over to the Settings tab and enter in all of your users. Now, there are no user fees or seat licenses, so you can define every person in your company as an AvaTax user if you want. And it is a roles-based user system. So your administrative user has read-write capability on the database. They can go in and concede Nexus. They can create transactions, adjusting entries as necessary. Your day-to-day user is more of a read-only person. They can run reports and look at transactions, but they're not going to be able to make any changes in the database. Couple of good tools built into the service. And this is why you might want to give access to some of the other employees that you might not have been thinking about for the tax service. But the basic tax calculator is a lookup tool that will return the state, city, local, and combined sales tax rate for any address in North America. The advanced tax calculator does essentially the same thing, but it does it at a line item level on a pro forma invoice. It'll give you all of the breakout. It'll give you the sales tax for each line item as well as the tax for the total order. And it takes into effect any custom tax rules that you might have built into the system. The organization tab is where you build your company file. AvaTax is a multi-company system, so I have a number of different companies that I've created in my system. These are all independent companies right now that share some amount of ownership. It could be set up so that these companies do their tax reporting up through the main company. In this case, I haven't set up my demo system that way, but we are able to support parent-child relationships, and we can do tax reporting down to the third level. So pretty much the message here is, however you have your general ledger set up, we're able to emulate that within the tax system. You'll want to go over and concede Nexus, which is just a checkbox. When you concede Nexus, that's where you're telling us what states you want to be able to collect sales taxes in. Now, AvaTax is a multi-country system. We're currently supporting transactional taxes in every country that's recognized by the United Nations, as well as maybe about a dozen more. Initially, out of the box, you'll have all the content for every U.S. state, as well as all the Canadian provinces. So you'll have content for all of those, as well as the islands, the protectorates, the territories. Wherever there's a North American sales tax, that content's available to you. So you go in and you check off the states and or provinces where you have Nexus and you need us to collect the sales tax. And then let's say at some point you hire somebody on the Marshall Islands or Guam or some other state. Now you need to register and collect tax in that area. You just simply come into the AvaTax Nexus jurisdiction selector tool, check that box, and from that point forward, we start calculating tax for you. The items file is the backbone of the system. This is where you're going to spend most of your time setting up your tax calculations or setting up your tax service. So let me go in there. The way I have this set up is I've uploaded portions of my inventory into AvaTax. So what you're seeing is the SKU code, a description, and then an AvaTax system tax code associated with that particular SKU code. This way, we know when we get an order in from your company with this product number, we know that it is associated with this tax code, and we know all the rules and all the rates for all 12,000 jurisdictions behind that sales tax code. So this is the heart and soul of the system. This is where you're going to spend most of your time. You get this piece done, then you can pretty much walk away from sales taxes. And there's some built-in drill down tools into the system, or you can use spreadsheets. I find it more I find it more efficient to be able to do this mapping within the web store or the ERP system. And our connectors support that in pretty much all of them. Currently, by the way, we're supporting over 550 different connections to, I'll start again, we're supporting connections to over 550 different ERPs, web stores, point of sale systems. It's as well as we have an open API. So even if you have a custom system or you've grown one up internally, you'll be able to integrate and use the AvaTax services. So after you get your system set up and we start collecting taxes, you're going to want to take a look periodically at the different transactions that have come in. This is a real good screen for self-audits. It's a real good screen for when the state auditors come walking in, because you'll be able to call up all of your transactions for any range of dates by state, by country, or by specific customer or document code. Now I have all my sales invoices numbered so that they show up first. Further down, you'll see all the purchase invoices that I enter into my demo system. By opening up any one of those, and I could have called it up just by invoice number, you'll see that we track the customer up here, the date of the transaction, a purchase order number. In this case, this transaction came in from a web store. We'll tell you what the total amount of the order was, if there was any discounts, what was not taxable, and what the total taxable amount on that invoice is, as well as the total tax collected. And then for each line item, we'll tell you what was taxable and non-taxable. We can open up the detail on the line items, and then within that you can see which jurisdictions apply to that specific transaction. Now in this case we had delivery points to a place in Monroe County, New York, as well as Arapahoe County in Colorado. Within each of them we'll tell you what's taxable, what's not taxable, the tax rate for that jurisdiction, and what your tax liability is for that line item for that invoice. So there's a lot of data that we're creating and maintaining for you that you don't have to keep on your side, because you can always log in and see this on our side. This whole transaction, when it gets sent to us by your ERP or your web store, the whole transaction takes about a third of a second to get all of that data calculated and back to the originating system. Incidentally, your your data entry operators are generally not going to go into AvaTax, and your customers on the web store will never see it. All of this happens in the background. The only thing that your employees will see are screens, order entry screens, or quote screens, or invoice screens that they're already familiar with using, and the only screens your customers are going to see is the shopping cart that you put out on the website for them. There's a number of reports built into it. You'll have sales tax, consumer use tax reports, excise reports. Everything can be exported to a spreadsheet. All the data that we maintain is available at any time. Let me show you how the reporting engine works. I'm going to go into the tax return reports and print out the jurisdiction detail report. Now I can run this for any state. So let me run it for the state of New York. I can run it for any range of dates, but I'll just pick data from last month. Let's also show the freight breakout and the state assigned code, because you're likely to need that when you do your sales tax return. There's a half a dozen different ways to slice, dice, and display the data, and all of our reports can go to Excel, PDF, or an HTML file. So I'll run this out to an HTML file, and this particular report is the one that you'll need to use if you're doing your sales tax returns manually at the end of the month. It'll give you all the total sales within each jurisdiction, and you'll see I've got sales in a number of different counties. It'll tell you if there was any taxable freight, what was not taxable, what your total exemptions are, total taxable sales, the tax rate in that jurisdiction, and your tax liability within that jurisdiction. Go through to the next. We can do county. We'll show you the city taxes, and then if there are any special tax jurisdictions like the transit district in Dutchess County, New York, and then summaries down the bottom. So the tax engine is real simple, or the reporting engine is real simple to use. It's something that you'll use regularly, and I think you'll find it makes it a lot easier for you at the end of the month to do the sales tax returns. Now, we also do a tax return service for almost 2/3 of our clients, I suspect, are using this service. What we do is, since we already have all your sales and purchasing information in AvaTax, at the beginning of the month, we're able to produce a liability worksheet for you to go in and review. It's a summarized worksheet, so you review the numbers. If you need to make any adjustment entries, you certainly can, and then you just approve the data for us. Now, when you first start your subscription for AvaTax returns, we'll set up a bonded holding account at your bank, and monthly we're going to ask you to transfer funds into that holding account that will cover your entire tax liability for the period. We'll go in once a month and we'll withdraw funds to cover all of your tax liabilities. We'll distribute all those funds to the states. You'll get emails saying who was paid and how much and when, and then all of your tax returns are available as PDF files within your console. So this eliminates all the aggregation of sales and purchase information, eliminates the spreadsheets that you're using to manipulate to come up with the liability worksheet that you're now using to produce your returns, and it eliminates all the check requests and the validation to the general ledger. You'll have one export, you'll do one transfer, we'll make one pull, and then we'll distribute all the funds for it. So what you wind up with at the end of the day is a very elegant, easy to use system. We've worked since day one to make AvaTax the most accurate, easiest, fastest, affordable, and most reliable way to do sales tax. So you don't have to spend time on compulsory non-profitable tasks. You can focus more on strategic issues that are going to help you grow your business. So with that, let me open it up for questions. Are there any questions? Well, I'll take that as a good sign that we've covered just about everything that you wanted to. Let me leave you with a thought from Jack Welch, very smart man. Your companies, the best companies, are highly focused on what they do. They do one thing or a couple of things, and they do it very well. It doesn't make sense to spend time and resources doing things that don't make you profit, don't grow the company, and don't make you stronger. So Jack Welch said to do what you do best and outsource the rest. We can't agree with him more. So with that, let me thank you very much for attending today. Um, as a next step, this is something that you'd want to investigate further. I would recommend that you reach out to Jasmine Pert at AlfaPeople. Her phone number and her email address are here. She's happy to work with you and bring our resources to the table to try and help you become easily more tax compliant. Thanks again, everybody. Speak with you soon.